Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Sung Yang, the chair of the Department of Mass Communication, Advertising, and Public Relations at Boston University's College of Communication. Also, starting on July 1st of this year, I'll hold the Herald version in the chair position. Welcome to today's COMtalk event, where we are discussing how AI is changing the game for advertising and public relations. So we are part of a series of virtual events that cover everything from advertising and film to journalism and media science. Today's conversation will be recorded and available on our YouTube channel later. AI is shaking up every industry, including ours. On the one hand, it helps creatives tell better stories at a lower cost. On the other hand, it can lead to inaccuracies, plagiarism, and job loss. So how do we navigate the pros and cons of this technology? So we got an amazing panel to help us to figure that out. Let me introduce them. So Ben Johns is the founder of Sundogs, a company that uses data and AI to create amazing content. He has worked with clients like Disney, L'Oreal, Apple, and Google. And before that, he was a creative director at agencies like Hill Holiday and Digitars. Kelly Sullivan is the executive vice president of futures at Weber Shandwick. She built partnerships across academia, tech, and industry to drive innovation. She's also been leading the Futures Fellows program for 7 years, mentoring students interested in media, culture, and tech. Rachel Rubinstein is a social strategist at Ogilvy Health. She's got a background in account management and skilled in traditional, digital, and social media. She's also Ogilvy Health AI ambassador, helping the agency integrate AI into their work. Last, Dr. Amy Christian is our moderator today. Dr. Christian is the incoming Sandra Fraser Professor of Public Relations at Boston University's College of Communication. She's a global communications executive with a strong scientific background and experience in corporate positioning and thought leadership. We are thrilled she has joined the faculty here at Com, and we are pleased she's able to guide today's discussion. Dr. Christian, let's get started.
Thank you, Seung, and thank you to Ben and Kelly and Rachel for joining us on this really exciting conversation. I am a self-professed AI enthusiast. I am not an expert. So I'm really happy to have 3 experts on the panel to help us dive into this really interesting and exciting topic. Before we get started, a word about our format. I am a naturally inquisitive person, so I have a ton of questions, but I really encourage all of the folks on the line to submit your questions through the Q&A panel on the Zoom, and we will absolutely get to as many as we can before the hour ends. So let's get started. Ben, Kelly, Rachel, I know all of you are on the agency side and have clients, and so let's just start in. And what are the clients really asking for right now in terms of AI? What are the hot things that people really want to do or know when it comes to this technology? And Ben is the first one on my screen, so let's start with him.
Everybody is asking, what do I do and what do I do sort of today? So I think the kind of middle distance promise of I can generate creative, it's going to make all these efficiencies. They have us in this kind of a faster horse space. And so everybody's like, when do I get the faster horse and how fast does the horse go? As opposed to what new things can I create or how is it going to reinvent where we are? And I think that brings out this tension where there are individual users in orgs who are using AI and finding a lot of value, and executives at the same time who are, and in the middle are all the people who make the donuts. And they are not able to move the org or the people in the org at the same pace. So everybody's like, let's hop on the faster horse and see what happens. And then they've got to move all of these people who are differently abled. So what do I do? When do I do it? And how does my org change, I think, are the questions that we're getting.
Kelly, is there anything that you can add to that?
Yeah, first of all, I just totally agree with all of that, and the horse, 100% on the horse and the donut making, 100% with you, Ben. I think one of the things that we're seeing is the questions have evolved in the last year a little bit, right? We've got folks at different phases of that sort of AI activation continuum, but we're getting sort of some really smarter questions that get at the specifics, right? What are the benefits we can get? So folks are asking a lot lately around how can they leverage AI platforms to better understand kind of media narratives and sort of maybe even predict how certain pieces of content will resonate with different audiences, right? And then in particular, what do they do with that new sort of AI intel? To your point, Ben, we still are getting tons of questions. How can you help me upskill my organization, whether that's a high performing CPG company or a professional services firm or even an Ivy League institution, right? Like folks are really, this is not a standard problem. So folks are coming to us on all manner. But one of the things that's come up a lot recently, and I'm curious, Rachel and Ben, if you're hearing this too, is people want to understand, like, how are they appearing in LLM results? Like, and how can we improve those results? So the idea of like, what's the new SEO? What's the new answer engine optimization? Because again, if there's a new territory, everyone wants to capitalize on it right away. So that question is coming up a lot. I'm curious if you're hearing that as well.
Yeah, that is fascinating. I hadn't actually even considered that, but I imagine that will become just more important as time goes on and more people are utilizing AI. Rachel, can you add to this?
Sure. Well, I sit specifically in health, and for health clients, I think there's a general curiosity across the board for what AI can do for us, since there are kind of regulations and there are like more reviews that come along with our content, and a lot more that just comes with health. So it depends on clients, but I think there is definitely a hunger to just learn about AI in general, like what it can do to create efficiencies, how it can help our internal processes go smoother and faster, and yeah, just really eager to learn.
Absolutely. So let's pivot.
I was just going to pick up on Kelly's question, because this question of answer engine optimization is one that we're getting a lot also. And a statistic that kind of shocked me, but also excited me because it's our business, was that 75% of the content that consumers spend their time with by the end of this year will be video. And so in particular, thinking about what video strategies will surface in LLMs, while the current state of LLM's ability to read video is somewhat limited, is creating a huge shift in people thinking about their own content strategies. Right. More video, what video, more durable video. I think on the advertising side, there's been this, sort of like culture chasing churn of social video that has a shelf life of 8 days or so. And we have a lot of content customers who are thinking, I need a durable base of video content that's going to be found by these engines, so that when people are looking for answers, they're getting an answer, and it's from us, and it's in video. And given the expense of that and the complexity of that still in production, that's a big question. That pivot is a big question.
I think that the whole idea of machine readability, to your point, Ben, is only going to become more and more of a consideration. This sounds like a great idea. Is it machine readable? And if not, what do we do to make it so? Or are we creating two different paths? So I think it's going to become earlier and earlier. It used to be that, sort of you would think at the end, how do we make sure? Now it's going to be, I think, an early on decision, because if you're going to make it, you want to make sure as fewer people are going to search and more people are sort of shifting to those GPTs. How do you make sure that you're getting resonance in all those places you want to be? I'm sorry, Amy, didn't mean to cut you off.
No. This is fascinating. And I was going to pivot the conversation to workforce organization and what jobs are going to look like. But I'm going to pause that for a moment, because now I want to ask around the limitations and maybe more importantly or excitingly, the opportunities around creative and AI. I think we all are getting a little bit more used to what the text capabilities are with different AI tools, but I'd love to understand a little bit more about what the cutting edge science around creative AI is looking like.
I'm happy to jump in there to start, because that's a place where we're super active. The more creatively complex an output is, the harder it is for AI. And so, yes, text, it's incredibly powerful and versatile and should be, I think, the first stop for for AI. Display ads, again, relatively simple. A static image and text are churning into the AI engines, I think, super quickly, and there'll be generative results there that are super strong. Video is significantly more complex. It's not just character and character interaction, but timing, location, movement, all things that the AI engines really wrestle with. So we see an excitement about the idea of generating video, but the real opportunity is actually not in generative video, which I think is going to be slow to come and stay in the uncanny valley for a long time, and much more in the content automation around video. That is componentizing video that you've shot, assembling that video in ways that are either contextually relevant or relevant for an audience. You're just going to get a higher quality output with the kind of controls that clients expect by using AI to automate the content, as opposed to imagining that AI is going to generate it.
Rachel, Kelly?
Yeah. It's also, I think, the consideration for how it's helped in development, in creative development, to build a vision for clients that maybe wasn't there before, or you weren't able to show so easily, like something that lives in our creative brains that, sometimes you can't even put on paper or put into words, can now be visualized by this engine and shown in a really comprehensive way, in a very efficient way. So I think that's also a really powerful way it's being used, is like within the creative process and storyboards and kind of those initial outputs to clients.
I totally agree with that. I think that there's to your point, Ben, about all the complexities. I do think that's a little bit, we're sort of still getting there. But Rachel, to your point, the idea that we can sort of better articulate a concept to sell it in, to be able to do those bigger projects. And I think for people who aren't sort of that deeper craft creative, like the idea of us just being able to get inspired by like the HeyGens and Kapwings of the world to just help us sort of that kind of stuff, where it might sort of historically be just a piece of flat content, and we can better sort of activate our people around that. I think when we think, to your point, Amy, about internal education, rallying people, sometimes just seeing the possibilities, whether it's showing somebody something in Firefly or imagining something in Runway, it gets people to think differently. And then idea of it's not relevant for me sort of goes away when you can show possibilities that sort of get people thinking sort of outside their comfort zone. So I do think there's distance till we can get that at scale, but I think the inspiration possibilities are really, and the motivation possibilities are massive.
I think one of the disconnects that we're seeing on that front, interestingly, is the engines are making a certain type of content, this, like, for lack of a better focus, this kind of sci-fi, Ridley Scott, Hollywood production kind of content. And if you look at consumers, they're spending much more time with creator content, or much more time with lo-fi content in a thing that looks like Roblox. And so this disconnect of the tools are making an old model that we're still sort of chasing, when consumers want a very different kind of content experience. The creator world and the AI world are largely unreconciled in communication. And it's almost like there are two different planets. And we have a set of clients who are steering into creators and authenticity and the variety of voices, and then these sort of engine builders who are making a thing that looks like, like Ridley Scott shot it, or it should be part of a Hollywood movie. And they're both cool, but they haven't connected, or they haven't reconciled themselves, which is an interesting tension, I think.
Totally.
So what do you think will be kind of the turning point? What needs to happen in order for us to be able to reconcile those two things?
I think the models are going to get much better. And so we'll be able to make a thing that looks like whatever we decide, if we prompt differently and they're trained differently. But ultimately, it's going to land on consumer response. And I don't know about you guys, but the high school age kids I know have started to say that looks like AI made it, as an insult. And so anything that reeks of that in tone or in substance, I mean, it's a Steve Buscemi, hello, fellow kids kind of feeling that they're getting from it. So I think the models are going to chase a kind of human creativity that, as our feeds fill with chum, people are going to go in a different direction and look for something that's different. So I think we have a long time before they converge.
That's right. Okay. I think the idea of AI slap is real, and I think that's going to it's going to create a backlash. I think it'll be interesting to see where that settles.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's definitely turning into kind of a templatized, put in a prompt, and this is what you'll get, especially on like social, with a lot of prompts going around. So while there's trends that go out, there's also just, it becomes overfiltered and overpopulated as well.
Yeah.
I
So
think there's, I think that there's a sort of, sorry, Amy, I didn't mean to cut. I
No,
think
it's
there's
okay.
a sort of a sense of like, you know, I'm solving a problem for somebody else. Like it's fine for me to generate this slop because strategically it's on brief, but I'm not interested in it or I don't want it. And that empathy gap for marketers of like, I've solved this problem for all of those people as opposed to I am those people and this isn't interesting for me or it isn't compelling for me. We haven't bridged that yet, I don't think.
Absolutely. So I'm so pleased I went with that question because I think that leads into kind of the human relationship that we should be having with AI. And I know from our pre webinar discussion that organizational change and how jobs will change is heavily discussed with your clients. And Kelly, I loved your answer in the pre-discussion. So I'd love for you to just kind of give a sense of what are the concerns that folks have with AI and perhaps our jobs being taken over and how we can have a really productive relationship with this new technology for the better for all of us.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's one we talk about quite a lot. People, I think, you know, we've done a lot of work. We've talked to what, like 150 clients in the last year. A lot of them, I don't know, Ben and Rachel, about you, but a lot of those turn into therapy sessions of sort because everyone is sort of grappling. Senior and junior people have existential concerns. What's happening with our industry? Is my team going to look the same? I just hired people. Am I going to be able to keep those people? To practical concerns. What tools can I use? Am I allowed? Do I have to disclose to my client? Who pays for them? Like there's all manner of questions and concerns. And I think, you know, to the pre-conversation we were having, there's a big, you know, we know that historically technology transformation projects, an overwhelming amount of them fail. Like all of the big four, like 70% of tech transformation projects fail. Like it, and that's accepted, which is crazy and a topic for a whole other conversation. But the reason we find, and I'm curious what everyone thinks, we think that the issue there is too much emphasis on the technology itself and not enough emphasis on the people behind the technology, right? So we joke around internally that it's not about the code, it's about the culture, right? And so we've got people who are experts who've been doing their jobs for years, who are killer at it, like the people you want in the foxhole when you need to deal with that topic, and they're nervous about all the changes, right? So we're just trying to figure out, and a big part of the sort of the AI new program we're doing with our North America staff is trying to understand like the fears, the motivations, the hurdles, the complexities, and build program that actually acknowledges those instead of just ignoring them and saying, well, people need to get over it, because that doesn't work. Historically, it just doesn't work. So we're trying to figure out how do we balance ways to really kind of appreciate and have empathy for all the different places where people sit, make sure all the training that we're doing is super inclusive, whether you're a senior person or a junior person, whether you're a strategist or a producer, making sure that everyone feels welcome. And then making sure, we've heard this loud and clear, that we are orienting toward application and not theory. Like, how does this affect your day-to-day, your workflows? How is this going to look different in the work you put together for your client and how you put it together? So while the bigger conversations absolutely have to happen about ethics and sustainability and ownership and all of those things, we spend a lot of time on those, but to our earlier conversation, the practicalities and how does this change my workflow are things that we need to be in the weeds on day-to-day. Once people see it and they have the light bulb, if you get beyond the, unicorn on roller skates moment or the creating a haiku moment, once you get past those, you're like, okay, well, what does this mean for my actual work? And once you start to see your workflows change and realize how that could up level what you can deliver, it really becomes a whole different story. Longer answer, sorry.
No, very, very well said. Rachel, do you have anything to add to that? And then Ben, I'm sure that you also have something to add.
I mean, I can't speak to the therapy sessions because I am more of mid-level, but I think the morale has been good toward adapting it and kind of using it as a helper. I mean, as maybe not answering the question, but I've always said like it's kind of like a second brain that you can use, which is helpful. And we also have like an AI model within our agency that we're able to use. So it's able to really help us. So I think the morale has been good in adapting it, and just like the learnings have been really nice. We have sessions and a lot of I don't know, just a lot of support on how to use it, and that's really important. I also have to run to get my charger, so I'll be right back.
I think there's a question that at the sort of front edge of these models people are tangling with, which is a much more of a sort of existential one. So I saw a post today that said the models are rapidly approaching the capability of human PhDs, and that at some point in the near future, something north of 90% of the communication will be AI to AI, not AI to human. And I think what that leaves us with is what is the outcome that matters? If it's, PhD level AIs talking to PhD level AIs, what conversation are they having that leads to an outcome that is good from a human perspective? What do we want to have happen as a result of all of this efficiency? And it seems to me to be an under-addressed question that has come out in an interesting way. So in the early, a year ago when we had this conversation, there was this idea that the best model we have is the Industrial Revolution. And there was this explosion of productivity that drove, 10% plus increases in GDP year over year. And Satya Nadella said, a couple of weeks ago, the AI is great, but where is the 10% growth? And where is the growth? Where is the growth that is going to come as an output of all of this efficiency? Right now, I think, again, we're stuck in sort of faster horse mode of like, I can do a thing that I did before much more quickly and much more efficiently. What is the net value of that? And the faster all of those things get, what is the value of any of them? And it's an interesting question, especially for the agencies where, yes, we have outputs and yes, we tie to business results, but a lot of times our work is sold in hours. And what's the value of an hour plus a model, which is going to force a massive reinvention of the value creation, how work is valued, and the conversations we have with businesses about how we're helping them move their businesses forward.
Some big philosophical topics here. I don't know if we're going to solve them in an hour, but we've gotten some engagement from our audience, and I'd love to start to ask some of their questions if that's okay. Norma Gaffin has written, as you work with AI, what check and balances do you suggest putting in place to ensure the quality of what you're getting from AI, whether it is audience insights or outputs? And I think that speaks to what I think all of you have intimated around kind of the sustainability as well as the ethics around kind of the AI outputs. So does anybody have any ideas to help Norma?
I don't know, one thought that I would add for us from a perspective, our sort of thinking about it, that's helped us sort of help our people sort of understand and how they approach kind of taking content that they might get from an LLM, is the idea that earlier last year, everyone was sort of looking at the LLMs as like, they're going to give me an answer. I'm going to ask it a question. It's going to give me an answer. This is a transaction. I ask, it gives, we're done. Right. And so changing that mindset to be that this is always an exchange and this is always an iterative conversation. And the idea that you have to treat that exchange the same way you would treat a conversation you would have with a person. So I ask you a question, you answer it. I don't know what you mean, or I don't think you're right. And we have a back and forth. So first and foremost, the idea that if you're really engaging in a true dialogue and then revisiting and iterating and saying, okay, wait, I don't like that tone, or that part of the question doesn't feel right to me, and sort of really going back. The first time I saw someone do like a series of iterative prompts that took like close to an hour, I thought, this is going to be the biggest waste of time I've ever experienced. And then when you get to the end of it and you realize like how much you've learned along the way. So first and foremost, I think that iterative approach and that mindset at the beginning is really important. And then can't underscore like the judgment. Like the stuff has to be read by people who understand the topic. Stuff can sound great and it can have zero kind of real meaning behind it. So I think, the more we just are really kind of making sure that we're understanding that these are sidebar tools that can help us either kind of eliminate the blank page to jumpstart, or help us move from an outline to a draft, or a draft to a better draft, or to revisit how it might be received by another audience. But thinking of it as the solve is, I think, that's our first sort of challenge. But the more we can just keep revisiting and remind ourselves that we are in the driver's seat and we are ultimately responsible for the accuracy and the efficacy of sort of what comes out.
I had framed to me, someone said, do you want a good answer or do you want the right answer? And it changes what questions you ask of the LLM. I think particularly Rachel, in your world, in the health world, like I need the right answer. I don't want a good answer. Where in the marketing world, you know, good answer, a series of good answers, et cetera, is pretty interesting. Some of it though is just learning in the process and tying it very specifically to outcomes. So we did a project for the election this year where we generated a set of synthetic personas based in a fictional county in Pennsylvania, swing county, and we had a spectrum of voters, and they were trained on 150 years of Pew Research data, election data, et cetera, et cetera. And we ran an election, mock election, on the morning of the election with those personas, and it had Harris winning by a vote. And so obviously we did a deconstruction, and the flaw that we found in the model was that we'd used 150 years of data and not front weighted it for the last 5 years of data, and we'd missed a more recent shift. If you built the model based on sort of more durable values feeding those synthetic personas, then that would have been the result, still very close but different. And so understanding what's in the guts of the models, what questions you ask, and then you know, tying them back to outcomes, I think, are the checks and balances, some of the checks and balances you need.
Yeah, could not agree more with both of you. I think initial prompt is so important, just making sure that it's just engineered so perfectly, and then also constantly interrogating the prompt, asking for clarifying questions, and like, why do you think that, or give me your sources. Like, that's so important, because I've also looked at something, asked a question, asked for sources, and the sources were 20 years old. Like, that's irrelevant. And you just get this output that is non-specific and not accurate, which is super important. Also on kind of the agent side, because building agents is maybe my favorite thing ever with AI. It's so important to also know that the inputs you're putting is something that you've told it to do, and you have to always understand like where the information is coming from. So there's no bias there. And that's just like, it's a fascinating, you know, kind of get tied up into it, but it's just something that is really important to consider when you're using AI.
Well, and that really leads me to, and this may not be a question, but I'm going to say it anyway. I'll get on my soapbox for a moment. Early on, when we were talking prior to the webinar, I mentioned that there is a school of thought led by an individual named Connor Grennan. If anybody knows Connor Grennan, he's an NYU Stern School of Business professor and a self-professed AI architect. And he very famously says and believes that the future of AI is for English majors. And the reason he says that is that he doesn't feel that the tech associated with AI is so technical. He thinks the more important piece of it is the ability to interact with the tool and prompt and understand how to curate content and how to really utilize the English language in order to get the best prompt, in order to get the best output. And so I think this topic is so important for this audience and for us as communicators to be really thinking about and to be leaders in this field, because of the ability of what we have with words in order to really drive the success of AI forward. So I guess my question is, do you agree with that? Or do you think that that is malarkey?
I'll say, as an English major, I bet he was an English major. And I might broaden it to say it creates a return for the liberal arts, maybe not just English, because I think it's about how quickly you can learn and the ways that you can problem solve with a wide toolkit. And I think language is one of those. But I will say, as somebody who spent a decade inside of Google, the language that programmers use, which is not really the English language, shows up a lot in how you engineer prompts and the ways that those prompts work. So as much as I would love to stand up for all my fellow English majors, I would say it's great for the liberal arts because it's about how quickly you can learn, not about what you know.
Very well said. Thank you, Ben. Kelly?
I agree with that. That's really well said. So that's a really tough act to follow, but I will try and fall short, I'm certain. But I think, you raise a really good point, Ben, and the idea that like, I agree, like the ability to articulate and refine and really get accurate about what you want is super important. I think the liberal arts point of view is super key also because that context that you and Rachel mentioned, like if you're building a model, it's all great to have information, but the proper context to really understand the universe in which you are asking the questions is critical. But we talk a lot too about this, the skills that are required for communicators in the environment right now, given what's changing and how fast it's changing. And so in addition to that articulation and that sort of kind of liberal arts mindset, that sort of comfort and willingness to be uncomfortable and willingness to embrace change and the curiosity, like when these tools come out, people are kind of like either people are game and they're going to try, or like, that's not my jam, I'm not going to do that. So the comfort in jumping in and not knowing what the heck you're doing and making some stuff that isn't going to be right, it's just knowing that it might inform a new way of working, and knowing that that could be the thing. When Twitter first came out, we all laughed at it. We all said, no one cares what you had for breakfast, right? Like that was the thing at the time, and it's elected a president, right? I mean, it's what it was when it started isn't what it will eventually be. So I think that curiosity, and then like we said, the importance of judgment and knowing, like having confidence that laying into understanding how the models are trained, how the prompts are articulated, how the results are refined and questioned and rewritten, just that all of those skills like that you learn as a liberal arts person or as a writer, as a journalist from a BU grad, like that journalism, interrogate again, like it's never been more important.
Thanks, Kelly.
We had a super interesting conversation with the Ad Lab students earlier this week, where I said the bad news is that the on-ramps to a career in advertising are all being wrecked by AI. A lot of the like low-value repetitive tasks that when I was coming into the business taught us about advertising and taught us how to think and how to write a brief and interpret a brief and so on, like those things are being wrecked in a bunch of ways by AI. So that's the bad news. The good news is nobody knows anything. And so that means, to Kelly's point, that curiosity is the key word here. Curiosity is greater than knowledge. You don't need a body of knowledge in the way that you did in the past in order to be successful. And you could, in the next month, put yourself in the top 10% of people who know things about how to work with an AI model that, FYI, senior executives don't have time to do, brand managers don't have time to do, creative directors don't have time to do. And so there's a chance to leapfrog because of that knowledge destruction into a very different place in the job market. Not comforting if you're a graduating senior and looking for a role, but trust me, you can make yourself into an expert that executives will envy in a surprisingly short amount of time.
100%.
Rachel.
That was all perfectly said. I think what Kelly said also in the previous question, like being able to have a conversation with the LLM, like that is also such a skill. And I think that also comes from kind of like that liberal arts, English major side, comms major side, I'll add. But I think that also is such a core skill that you have to constantly be talk to it like a friend almost, and use it as like another tab on your computer that you can just go to. So that skill to adapt and really use it is maybe comes from that background as well.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you for validating that answer and adding your own spin. I think that was fascinating. I'm actually not an English major. I was a biochemist that moved into communication. And I think that experimental mindset that I grew in undergrad actually, and I think that speaks to your thoughts around curiosity, is really what drives my enthusiasm around this topic as well. All right, we are getting some great engagement from our audience, but I want to make sure that we ask this question before the end of the panel, because it was something that I didn't actually believe when I first heard it. And so I would really be interested in your thoughts around, the energy requirements for AI. And what do we need to be thinking about in terms of using AI responsibly from a sustainability and, even climate change type of perspective when it pertains to the energy requirements of this tool? So who would like to start with that open question?
I'm happy to jump in. I think it's a huge problem. I think it's under-recognized. The energy requirements are massive, and getting massiver. And so I think it's an underrated concern, as it feels like a toy, and yet behind the scenes are these massive, massive energy demands. So it's an under-recognized problem for sure. It has sustainability implications for sure. I think the models are going to get much, 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 much more efficient. There's been a lot of focus on big frontier models, which are the most energy hungry, as opposed to lightweight models. You can get an excellent LLM you can run on your phone, doesn't take that much energy. So we haven't aligned our need state with model efficiency yet. And so, more of that will come. The models will get more efficient, but I think that we need to be aware of it and right size the LLMs to energy demands, and hopefully there'll be more sustainable energy in general for everything, including energy hungry LLMs. But it's an under-recognized problem right now.
It's also a great reminder that you need to use it for when you need to, and intentionally, and just make sure that every time you're using it, it's for something important. I guess that's also a great reminder. Not a toy.
I think it'll be really interesting, to your point, is when consumers start pushing harder for it, because I think consumers are so intrigued at the possibilities and the tools, and we're in that learning moment. I think, to your point, there's going to be more pressure to really kind of create something that's not as big of an energy suck. I am also interested, to your point, Ben, about there's so much conversation about energy use, and this rarely ends up in that conversation. It's always a sidebar. I feel like at some point soon, those conversations are going to come together, and I think that will force some of the things we're talking about.
Wouldn't it be fascinating if it decoupled us from our screens a little bit? If it's solving all of these problems and we don't need to do so much work, then maybe there's less energy usage because the agentic AI has gotten good enough. We can be out in the world and not tethered to our phones or our laptops or our TV screens. That would be there's a utopian outlook for you, but maybe.
I dig that outlook.
So as a quick follow-up to particularly Rachel's point around intentionality, is that something that you guys consider when you are working with clients and who maybe want the faster horse, want to do something? Are you counseling clients in different ways, keeping the energy requirements on the forefront, or has that not really become an issue yet?
For us, it's early days. It's not there yet.
Yeah. It hasn't been a part of any conversation I've been a part of. Much more, what do we do? What's interesting? What's possible? It's very downstream. And I don't think that any of the usage levels that they are experiencing as enterprises are significant enough. If it's make a Studio Ghibli selfie, then those energy requirements are massive, but it's distributed. It's not one company. So no, we haven't seen it yet.
I suspect if we have this conversation again in a year, it'll be a very different scope there.
Interesting. All right. So let's go back to our audience questions here. And we have a question. What AI skills, such as understanding algorithms, AI ethics, or bias, do you believe are essential for professionals in our field? As mentioned earlier, this is more about discussing the human-AI relationship. Beyond AI skills, what professional competencies do you consider crucial in the AI era?
I think
No, go ahead, Rachel, go ahead.
I think how to craft the ideal prompt is kind of step one. Once you know how to do that, you can do a lot. I think also having your industry knowledge to know when things are incorrect, that's what we've been talking about already. But I think that's just the biggest power that you can have.
I think, just like we were talking, I think curiosity, adaptability, flexibility, understanding that the way we do it doesn't have to be the way we're going to do it. And that ability to that mindset has to shift. And I think it's always been important, but I think that mindset now of the way we did it yesterday may never be the way we do it again. And comfort with that, I think, is really important. I think that's going to be the thing that gets a lot of us through it.
I'll just add to those because I agree with both of you guys. I think a nose for outcomes. What does an outcome mean? It's not an interaction. It's not a kind of activity. And so being able to build a system that leads to outcomes that are durable and human will be a piece that, all these AI systems are supposedly built for. Are they attached in the right way, or are we still attached to proxy outcomes or things that feel like activity as opposed to value? So I think that nose for outcomes will be critical.
Absolutely. I was given some really good advice early on in my AI journey when I was trying to get one of my teams kind of upskilled in prompt development. And somebody had mentioned, and it's a brilliant idea and it works beautifully, is to do prompt parties and have your entire team come and kind of have an idea and have everybody create a prompt and really see what the tool gives as output based on what you're asking it, and then have an open conversation about how this person generated this prompt or this person tried to curate this answer in order to get some collective learning among your team. And it really was a nice way to upskill in a fun and creative way. So I would highly recommend that if you are looking to build your competency in that regard.
I think the shared component, Amy, of that is so important. That shared experience, whether you're junior or senior, we do a lot of Go Labs where we're on site with folks, devices in hand and that sort of thing. And that shared experience that folks can have in the moment and then refer to later on, like people do remember that. And you see people actually have light bulb moments, which is pretty great. And I just agree, couldn't agree more that that's a big way in helping people move more quickly toward this becoming not a thing they tried to becoming a thing they do every day.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I think if you don't have an 8-year-old, you should borrow one, especially if you're anxious, because they're the most fun. They're totally free. And so to sit and play and make monsters or invent a story, or like, they don't have a barrier to what it can do or should do or shouldn't do. And so it can be very freeing if you have anxiety yourself about how do I use this, and just, they treat it like an imaginary friend, which hopefully you had one when you were 8, and they're amazing and it's fantastic. They get very excited. So less to your point about the 4-year-old granddaughter, that your 4-year-old granddaughter may be your best teacher. I think she's already exposed to, she's going to grow up native of AI and be helped by AI starting very quickly, learning, school, storytelling, imagination, etc. But I think that she may be a teacher before she's a student.
Love this. Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say in the recap of this meeting that would not be sort of previously vetted. One of the headlines from like Copilot would be borrow an 8-year-old, which I think would be fantastic in the rewatching of it later. So sorry, Amy, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say that Ben's answer was in response to a question that I had not asked yet, which was, I have a 4-year-old granddaughter. When will she be exposed to experience and be helped by AI? And I think, Ben, you very eloquently said that, if probably already, and she will soon be our teacher. Like many digitally native students and work employees that I have had over the years, it's incredible. To follow up on that, I've always been very interested because I worked, when I was in corporate, I worked in regulated industries. I was in biopharma, biotech for my entire career. And being such a regulated industry created a lot of tension with the AI tools that we could use, we were allowed to use, and what was offered to us through the corporate space. And that really, to me, in my mind, begged a question around the utility of open and closed AI systems. Because as I understood it, AI systems are only really as good in the output as what it is able to draw from. So in my mind, closed systems were limited because they were only drawing from what was actually put into it. Now, understanding the danger of open systems and putting classified information into an open system is probably not what we want to do. How have you guys really been counseling your clients or working with open systems and closed systems? And what advice would you give folks that were kind of grappling with the same issues that I was questioning?
Please do not put your information into publicly available systems ever, ever, ever. We do. I'll joking aside, we talk to people all the time. We're like, hey, we built this. And you're like, why would you possibly put that information? So to your point, Amy, I think we spend a lot of time helping folks create secure environments so they can actually like really, you can use the general LLMs, for generic information and background and research. But if you really want to sort of dig in, like we have a secure sandbox that sort of has multiple platforms in it. You can actually put confidential information. So I think everyone needs a safe space to be able to really work and operate. And that gets complicated. IT gets in the mix. And I think we've talked about this before. If you just told me 5 years ago that some of my conversations would be with IT people at clients, I'd have thought you were crazy. And now a lot of clients are asking us to play that role, sort of helping them kind of navigate that sort of challenge. Because I don't know about you all, Rachel and Ben, if you've had this, but a lot of companies that we talk to, IT has made a decision. We are using this platform, and they've decided that Copilot is going to be the solve. And for a comms perspective, Copilot is not the solve. And there's plenty of point solutions that are necessary for communicators beyond what an enterprise kind of core kind of all up tool might be. So we do spend quite a bit of time helping folks sort of understand what environments they do need. And to Rachel's point, when do we need to create for them a specific agent that might help them with a very finite kind of need, or when do we create secure environments where they can sort of just work in safety and security?
This is related a little bit to the question that Jonathan put in the chat, which is when will verticalization arrive? I think there's an evolutionary question here where a lot of the AI conversation has been about these big frontier models, Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, et cetera, and they are not solving your problem. They are solving everyone's problem all at the same time with every piece of human knowledge that there is. And I think the closed models are not as effective because nobody has built value to solve them yet. That will come. Protections will come. Right now, it's unsatisfying. And so I think you need exactly the kind of cautionary approach that Kelly has. Like, be really clear. Don't put anything in a public model. Over time, I think models that get trained, they'll be isolated. You'll be able to take the kernels of a Gemini or ChatGPT, create a sandbox, have it learn on your own data. Some of the cloud providers are playing around there, but it's just evolutionary. They're not there. It's a frontier model, or it's, something that's insufficient pretty much.
Do you have anything to add, Rachel?
I think I'm all set on this one, actually.
Okay. Yeah. And I would agree with you, Kelly and Ben. And I always counseled my team that if you were just asking questions and you wanted information, using an open tool would give you a broader answer that you could then whittle down. But if you were only working in the closed environment, you just needed to realize that you were getting limited information, and it was only the information that was provided to it. So trying to balance what was public information and what was confidential information, and having the communicator really think about that and be thoughtful about it, so they weren't just out of fear only using the closed system because they were afraid that they didn't want to put any information into an open system, but to be really thoughtful about that.
I think we can see some of those frustrations in how bad intranet searches have been, right?
Right.
Google search
right.
is good because they've got massive data and it's incredible and they find the answer. And then I'm searching my intranet and I've a string of 9 things and it can't open a document that I had yesterday that I know the name of and who it came from. It's the same kind of thing. Like the facility that comes with much greater data is going to be much more powerful. It's just not there yet.
It's good to know that despite the influx of technology, we all still grapple with intranets and their inefficiency. I appreciate that.
So we have about 10 minutes left, and I'd love to kind of wrap up this incredibly robust discussion with a little bit of maybe best practice sharing. And so could you, and I apologize, this is again a question that has just come into my brain, so I have not prepared you, but would you guys be able to kind of share, and you don't need to name names, what is the best thing that you've done in the past 6 to 9 months when it comes to AI and working with clients, and what has been that best practice that you can share today?
I think the best thing is something that Kelly hit on already, which is you need to do the work. And I would say not just you need to do the work, you need to not talk about it. You need to not sit on your LinkedIn feed and look at videos of somebody else or a icon-filled summary of a thing that people did. You need to do stuff yourself and try it and see and find the edges. And I think you need to not just do the broad work, play across a bunch of models, but the deep work, like force the model to try and do something that feels impossible or really hard, and let that failure show you something about what the models can do and not do. A good friend of mine was the art director on the Volkswagen Pink Moon spot, one of the legendary spots of all time. And he was a huge skeptic of AI. And so I thought, well, I'm going to use the new VO2 engine to try and recreate shot for shot that spot. And see, you know, how close we can get and what's good and what's not and where we can get. And we didn't get anywhere near it, which is great, but certain things we could do and certain things not. And it showed us like good at environments and here are the prompts and here's where you run into trouble. And then here's the thing that like, no matter how much we wrestle with the models, it couldn't get there. So you yourself need to work the model to the point of failure in order to understand where the edges are. And that will teach you much more than 1,000 hours of scanning your feeds and, you know, reading the Hustle Bro thought leadership.
Great advice. Kelly?
I think just to take off on that, I think we talk a little bit when you think about learning, the idea of running actual pilots. So not, let's just try this for a little while, but literally like, we're going to help this client. We're going to collaborate with the client. So we're not doing it in a lab corner somewhere. We're getting a client that also wants to learn, that's also trying to achieve, to Ben's point, an outcome. There's something they're trying to deliver on. Let's try an entirely new way to do that. Everybody's a little bit, we have a plan, we have scope, we have some TBDs. It might go off the rails. We might have to rein it in. But that idea, if they're properly briefed, capital B, brief, right? If it's a proper brief and it's vetted right properly, and we have the right collaborators, like if they're agile, as in like, it's not going to take us a year, we're going to do this in 60 days or 30 days or 2 weeks, they can sort of show us the realities, ergo the fails, and the real possibilities, and we can iterate in real time, right? So the idea that we can get ongoing learning, iterative learning at pace, the way our business operates, is super important. And it helps clients also bring their organizations along. And I will say there's a couple that we're running right now, clients that we met with earlier in the year and sort of talked about broader things. They've run 3 or 4 smaller pilots. No, they're not break the bank pilots. They're smaller, let's learn together pilots that now we're having conversations with CEOs of multi-billion-dollar global agencies, of global firms, because it's intel they've never gotten before, right? So it's up-leveling our relationships because it's something new that no one's bringing. No advertising agency, no professional services firm, no one is bringing this intelligence, and we are. So it's changing the access that you have and the relationships that you have because we're in it together and sort of taking risks kind of in the same thing. So it gets us sort of, everyone's got skin in the game. So the more you can, I totally agree with Ben, and the more you can put skin in the game with an outcome that we're trying to get to, even if we don't get there, we've learned a ton, and the next pilot will be sharper.
Excellent. Thank you. Rachel?
This is more of like kind of just my favorite thing that I've seen implemented with AI in the past year maybe, but I just think just the trends that have emerged from AI, specifically like across social media, just how it's transformed social media after I feel like there was already such a big transformation with like influencers. Having just like a new space be brought in is really cool to see. So I'm really excited to see how it continues to transform.
Excellent. Thanks. Great advice. All right. So last question. Let's do a quick round robin because I'm very curious to know what is your favorite AI tool, either for text or for creative. I will start. And this is probably maybe old news at this point. I really love Perplexity. And the reason I love Perplexity is it does provide a very easy platform for that iterative approach that you mentioned, Kelly. And it's always supported by clear references. So if I really want to understand where they got that answer, I'm able to click in and find the source material. And I find myself having conversations with Perplexity all the time, trying to just kind of dig in. And I do speak to it very politely. I say, please and thank you. I say, you know, that's not exactly what I was looking for. Could you give me a little bit more nuance? And I'm able to get some really, really interesting answers with that tool. So Ben, what is your favorite tool?
My favorite tool is Suno. because you can make music, you can make songs. And so if you ever thought that research report needed to be a honky-tonk rockabilly song, the fact that you can do that and send that, like every single time I make something with it, it puts a smile on my client's face or my team's face. And it just is it's just fun. And it's the fun side, it's the playful side. Yes, Perplexity is awesome and ChatGPT is useful and Gemini in the cloud like makes my brain hurt, but it's, you know, super fun, and you always get something that puts a smile on people's face, which is, I think, great in the space.
Amazing. Kelly.
Can't wait to check that out, by the way, because I've heard
Yeah,
it. But
seriously.
I've never tried it. So I now feel like my colleagues are going to have to sit through a honky-tonk version of what I have to work on this afternoon. So thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. And I agree. I'm a huge Perplexity fan. The sourcing is massive. And I love consensus because it's that's kind of the academic research and it's all cited. But what I'm playing with is HeyGen, just because it's sort of more of that kind of video sort of, I can capture a video of myself and then I can create an alternative me that's saying all sorts of, so I'm worried about all the potential negative ramifications of that and the disinformation and all that sort of stuff, but I'm just more interested in understanding how it works. So not an everyday tool, but one that I'm just sort of intrigued by this week.
Fantastic. And Rachel.
I love Suno as well and send lots of happy birthday songs on that. Lots of smiles on the faces of all my friends. I am a big Firefly proponent. I love Firefly. I think it just transformed a lot of creative ideas. Again, like just bringing something to life that is in my brain. So I love to play around with it.
That is excellent. I love that question because I always learn something. I had never heard of Suno, and now I kind of feel like it's going to become my new obsession. So thank you for that. And I think we will wrap up. Soo-Eung, if you have anything that you'd like to share before we close up, but I really wanted to thank Ben and Kelly and Rachel so much for this fantastic conversation. And I really appreciate BU for asking me to moderate this great discussion. I'm thrilled to be joining the faculty, and I really enjoyed this opportunity. So thank you all.